They told you your biggest enemy is outside, people, failure, the world. But they never warned you about the one sitting inside your own skull. The voice that wakes up before you, whispers doubt before you even try, and laughs quietly every time you say, "I will change." It doesn't need chains to control you. It uses your own thoughts, your own memories, your own fears. And the scariest part? You start calling it me. It doesn't start loud. It starts like a whisper so soft. You don't even call it an enemy. It sounds like you. It uses your own voice, your own memories, your own logic against you. One moment, you're thinking about your goals, and the next moment, there's another thought, stepping in, calm and convincing, saying, "You're not ready yet. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe after you fix a few things about yourself." And you believe it, not because it is true, but because it feels familiar. It knows your patterns better than you do. It knows exactly when you feel weak, exactly when you hesitate, exactly when you compare yourself to others. It doesn't need to attack you like an outsider. It simply redirects you from within. You sit there thinking you are making a rational decision. But in reality, the decision has already been shaped before you even noticed it. It speaks in the language of reason. It doesn't say, "You can't." It says, "Be realistic." It doesn't say, "Give up." It says, "Wait for the right time." It doesn't say, "You are weak." It says, "You are not prepared yet." And that is where it becomes dangerous, because it never feels like fear. It feels like wisdom. Every time you try to rise, it adjusts its tone. When motivation is high, it becomes quiet, almost invisible. But when you are alone, tired, or uncertain, it becomes loud, detailed, and persuasive. It brings up your past failures, like evidence in a case against your future. It reminds you of moments you wish to forget, not to heal you, but to define you. And slowly, without force, it builds a version of you that never moves forward. It doesn't stop your body. It rewires your intention. You can sit with all the knowledge, all the ambition, all the plans, and still do nothing. Not because you are incapable, but because your own mind has already negotiated your limits. It convinces you that delay is harmless, that comfort is safe, that dreaming is enough for today. The most unsettling part is how natural it feels. You don't notice resistance. You notice agreement. You don't feel trapped. You feel understanding. And that is how it survives inside you. Not as a force you fight, but as a voice you trust. It doesn't argue with you directly. It doesn't need to. It simply plants a question at the right moment, and then steps back while you destroy yourself trying to answer it. You sit down with intention, ready to move forward, and suddenly it appears quiet, precise, almost intelligent. What if you fail again? And just like that, your direction changes without a single push. It disguises fear as logic. It builds entire conversations inside your head that sound reasonable, even responsible. It says things like, "Think properly before you act." But what it really means is, don't act at all unless there is zero risk. And that condition never exists. So you stay in analysis, in planning, in endless reviewing of possibilities that never turn into reality. It makes hesitation feel like intelligence. The longer you delay, the more it rewards you with a sense of being careful, being mature, being realistic. And you start to believe that not moving is actually a form of wisdom. But underneath that illusion, something is breaking. Your ability to trust your own first step, it feeds on overthinking. One thought becomes 10. 10 becomes a loop. And suddenly you are no longer living the moment. You are debating it. Every action has a counteraction in your mind. Every decision has a hidden consequence. Every possibility has a fear attached to it. And while you are busy calculating invisible outcomes, time passes without permission. It remembers your past mistakes with perfect clarity, not to teach you, but to restrain you. It replays them in high definition every time you try something similar. It says, "Last time you tried, this is what happened," as if your past is a permanent prediction of your future. And slowly you stop trying, not because you are weak, but because your memory has been weaponized against you. It turns imagination into paralysis. You can see success so clearly that it becomes intimidating. You can also see failure so vividly that it feels inevitable. And instead of choosing action, you begin to manage scenarios inside your head, like you are preparing for a war that never arrives. Even when everything is fine, it creates doubt about whether it should be. Peace becomes suspicious. Opportunity becomes risky. Growth becomes uncertain. And in that mental environment, hesitation feels safer than movement, even though movement is the only thing that could ever change anything. It doesn't stop you with force. It slows you with reasoning. It doesn't block your path. It convinces you to stand still and call it thinking. And while you are standing still, it quietly takes credit for every dream you never acted on. It doesn't arrive as panic anymore. It becomes something quieter, something routine, something you start calling normal. Fear of failure doesn't scream in your chest like it used to. It settles in your habits, in your timing, in your excuses that feel completely harmless on the surface. You wake up, and before you even decide what you want, your mind already checks what could go wrong. Not loudly, just automatically. At first, it was only in big moments, important decisions, big opportunities, something that mattered. But slowly, it expands. It spreads into small things too. Sending a message, starting a task, speaking an idea, trying something new. Every action starts carrying a shadow of, what if this doesn't work? And that shadow becomes heavier than the action itself. It teaches you a strange kind of discipline, not discipline of doing, but discipline of avoiding. You become consistent at delay, consistent at hesitation, consistent at choosing the safer version of every possibility. And the mind starts rewarding this behavior. It tells you, good, you didn't risk it. As if survival is the same thing as living failure, stops being an event. and becomes a personality in your head, something you try to avoid so often that you start shaping your entire identity around it. You don't say, "I failed." You start thinking, "I am someone who might fail." And that subtle shift changes everything. Because now every attempt feels like proof waiting to happen against you. Even your dreams start to adjust, not because they disappear, but because you shrink them before reality can reject them. You lower expectations so failure won't hurt as much. You prepare excuses in advance so disappointment feels controlled. And slowly, you begin to live a life that is designed not to be broken, but also not to grow. It becomes a daily behavior without needing effort. You don't consciously choose fear anymore. It chooses itself for you. You see opportunity, and your mind instantly shows you the downside. You feel inspiration, and immediately there is a counterweight pulling it back down. It feels like balance, but it is actually restriction disguised as awareness. The strangest part is how comfortable it becomes. Fear of failure starts to feel like safety, like protection, like intelligence. People around you may call it hesitation, but inside your head it feels like strategy. You are not avoiding life. You are calculating it. That is what it tells you. And every time you don't act, the fear becomes a little more confident. It learns that it doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to be present. A small pause before action. A small doubt before decision. A small delay before courage. And that small pattern repeats until it becomes your default setting. Even when you try to break it, it doesn't resist aggressively. It simply offers memories, moments where things didn't work, situations where effort didn't pay off. It brings them up gently, like reminders, like warnings, like a voice that claims it is protecting you from repeating history. And you listen because it sounds like experience over time. Fear doesn't feel like fear anymore. It feels like identity. You start recognizing yourself as someone careful, someone thoughtful, someone who doesn't rush into things. But underneath those labels, something very simple is happening. Action is being replaced by observation, and observation slowly turns into distance from life itself. It doesn't look like a prison from the outside. There are no walls, no chains, no guards standing in your way. You can move, you can talk, you can even plan your escape whenever you want. But the strange part is, you never really leave. Because the barrier is not around you, it is built inside you, shaped slowly by comfort, repetition, and the illusion of safety. It starts as comfort, the easiest choice, the least painful option, the place where nothing is demanded from you and nothing is taken away. At first, it feels like rest, a pause, a harmless break from pressure. But comfort is not designed to stay temporary. It expands quietly, filling every empty space where effort used to exist. You begin to protect this comfort without realizing it, not because someone forces you, but because your mind starts defending it like a treasure. Anything that threatens discomfort feels dangerous. Anything that requires effort feels unnecessary. Anything that demands change feels suspicious. And slowly, comfort becomes the standard. You measure everything against. The strange thing is, nothing is visibly wrong. You still live your life. You still do things. But your boundaries become smaller. Your risks become fewer. Your ambition becomes more polite. You stop reaching for things that might shake your routine. And without noticing, you start building a life that is carefully designed to never disturb you. The comfort zone doesn't stop you from dreaming. It just convinces you that dreaming is enough. You imagine success. You visualize change. You think about becoming better. But all of it stays in a safe space where nothing is required from you. It allows thoughts, but filters action. It allows intention, but blocks transformation. It uses familiarity as a weapon. Everything you already know feels safe, even if it is limiting you. Everything unknown feels risky, even if it could save you. So you keep choosing what is familiar, not because it is better, but because it is predictable. And predictability slowly becomes the cage you refuse to question. It also rewrites your definition of progress. Small distractions start feeling like productivity. Delays start feeling like preparation. Waiting starts feeling like wisdom. And you begin to believe that you are moving forward, even when you are standing in the same mental place, just rearranging your thoughts differently. Every day, inside this zone, effort starts to feel heavier than reward. Not because effort has changed, but because your tolerance for discomfort has lowered. So you avoid situations that challenge you, not because you cannot handle them, but because your mind has already labeled discomfort as unnecessary suffering. Even ambition becomes quiet. It doesn't disappear completely. It just loses urgency. It turns into something you visit occasionally, like a memory of who you wanted to be. And every time you step away from it, your comfort reassures you that you are fine as you are, that there is no real need to disturb this balance. The most dangerous part is that nothing feels wrong while it is happening. There is no alarm, no signal, no obvious failure. Just a slow shrinking of potential, disguised as peace. A life that feels stable, but only because it has stopped challenging itself entirely. And the mind keeps reinforcing it, telling you that stability is success, that avoidance is wisdom, that staying where you are is safer than becoming something uncertain. So you stay, not because you are forced, but because everything inside you has learned to prefer limitation over disruption. It doesn't shout when it enters. It repeats, again and again, in the same tone, until you stop recognizing it as something foreign. Negative thoughts don't feel like attacks at first. They feel like observations, small comments, quick judgments, passing ideas that seem harmless because they sound like they belong to you. It begins with one thought that doesn't even feel important, a doubt about yourself, a memory of something that didn't go well, a comparison you didn't ask for, and instead of disappearing, it stays. Then another thought joins it, and another, until what was once a moment becomes a pattern, and the pattern becomes background noise in your mind. You don't notice when it becomes repetition. That's how it survives. It doesn't rely on intensity. It relies on frequency. The same idea, in different forms, returning at different times, until your mind stops challenging it. And what is repeated often enough starts to feel like truth. Even if it was never questioned properly, it starts shaping how you interpret everything. A neutral situation becomes slightly negative. A normal silence becomes rejection. A small mistake becomes a prediction of failure. The mind stops seeing events as they are and starts filtering them through a lens that already expects disappointment. Even your successes don't escape it. When something goes right, it doesn't celebrate. It questions. It says it was luck. It says it won't last. It says you were just lucky this time, not capable. And slowly, even your achievements lose their weight inside your own head. It creates a loop where thoughts feed each other. One negative idea triggers another, and before you realize it, you are not thinking anymore. You are circulating. The same mental patterns, the same conclusions, the same emotional reactions, repeating without resolution. And in that loop, clarity becomes harder to reach because everything starts sounding familiar, even when it is destructive. It also changes your relationship with silence. When there is nothing happening around you, it fills that space. It doesn't allow emptiness. It brings up unfinished thoughts, unresolved fears, imagined failures. So silence is no longer peaceful. It becomes crowded. And you start preferring noise outside because the noise inside is louder. Over time, these thoughts start feeling personal. Not something happening to you, but something coming from you. And that is where it becomes most powerful. Because once you accept a thought as your own identity, you stop questioning it. You stop separating truth from repetition. You simply assume it must be real because it is familiar. It begins to affect how you speak to yourself. The internal language becomes harsher, more critical, more impatient. You start correcting yourself before anyone else even speaks. You anticipate judgment that hasn't arrived yet. And in doing so, you start living as if that judgment is already true. Even hope becomes fragile under it. Not destroyed, but weakened. Every positive thought is immediately balanced with a negative one, as if optimism needs permission to exist. And slowly, negativity stops feeling like negativity. It starts feeling like realism, like awareness, like being honest with yourself. And when something becomes what you believe is honesty, you stop resisting it. You accept it. You repeat it. You build your decisions around it until the mind no longer distinguishes between what is happening and what it keeps telling itself is happening. It doesn't fight change the way you expect. It doesn't panic when you decide to move forward. It doesn't resist loudly. It adapts, quietly, efficiently. It studies your patterns, your habits, your comfort zones, and then uses them to slow you down without you even noticing the resistance. Change is dangerous to it, not because it is painful, but because it is unfamiliar. And the mind has one priority that overrides everything else to keep things predictable. So whenever you try to shift direction, it doesn't block you directly. It recalculates you. It turns your intention into a safer version of itself. You decide to wake up earlier, and suddenly, your sleep feels more important than ever. You decide to start working on your goals, and suddenly distractions become more attractive. You decide to break a habit, and suddenly that habit feels more comforting than usual. Nothing outside changes, but everything inside adjusts to maintain the same outcome. It doesn't tell you, don't change. It tells you, not yet. And that small delay is enough, because not yet repeats itself until it becomes never, without ever sounding like a refusal. It gives you permission to believe you are still in control, while quietly postponing every transformation. The brain doesn't see change as progress at first. It sees it as instability, something uncertain, something that might cost energy, identity, or comfort. So it activates resistance, not through fear alone, but through logic. It begins to calculate risks that feel reasonable, even responsible. It says things like, focus on stability first, or fix a few things before starting, or wait until the timing is right. And timing never arrives in the way you imagine. There is always something slightly unfinished, slightly imperfect, slightly inconvenient, and the mind uses that imperfection as justification to remain unchanged. It builds a system where readiness is always just out of reach. Even when motivation appears, it is filtered. The brain allows enthusiasm, but reduces urgency. It allows ideas, but slows execution. It allows intention, but weakens momentum. So you feel like you are moving internally, but externally, everything remains still. It also protects your identity from disruption, because change is not just about action. It is about becoming someone new. And the brain does not easily let go of the version of you it already understands. So it reinforces old habits, old beliefs, old limitations, because they are familiar. Even if they are limiting, it makes change feel heavier than it actually is. Not because the task is impossible, but because the anticipation is inflated. You imagine effort, struggle, failure, uncertainty, all at once, before even starting. And that imagined weight becomes enough to delay real action. The most subtle part is how it disguises resistance as preparation. You are not avoiding change. You are getting ready for it. You are not delaying progress. You are planning it better. You are not stuck. You are thinking it through. And in that illusion of preparation, time passes without resistance being noticed over time. The brain becomes skilled at preserving the familiar version of you. It doesn't need to stop change completely. It only needs to slow it down. Enough for you to lose urgency. Enough for you to believe you still have time. enough for you to stay close to transformation without ever fully stepping into it.